Go into the world and tell every man that you meet, there is a man on the cross.
A Catholic Take. What you need to know right now. A bold synthesis of inspiration and information. Keeping you up to date on the news and issues from a courageous Catholic perspective.
A Catholic Take with Joe McLean starts now.
Praise be to Jesus Christ. Welcome back to A Catholic Take, a bold synthesis of information and inspiration. I'm your host, Joe McLean. It's good to be on with you. A dystopian worldview, a dystopian delusion, the globalist elites in the fight for the control of humanity. All right, so that may be a little over the top, but we're going to talk about it nonetheless. Are we in a fight for the soul? Well, Dr. Scott Ventureyra, a theologian, philosopher, and an economist, what a great mix that is going to be on the program. And we're going to be talking about his article over Crisis Magazine. Javier Milei gave a fire burner talk over at World Economic Forum. We're going to talk about that, why there is such a great contrast to what he said and the agenda of the WEF. We'll get Dr. Ventureyra to weigh in on that at 14 past the hour. Mike Koeniger is on the program today. He's back, our friend of the show. We lovingly call him the Brick Wall. He's from Virginia. And we're going to talk about two big stories in the news right now. Texas, of course. I mean, Governor Greg Abbott he basically lays down the law. He's like, listen, I'm going to defend the border. Is it a day late and a dollar short? That's the question in my mind. Lots of states back in Texas now. The map is looking very eerily similar to, let's say, 1861. Anyone? We'll talk about that with Mike Koeniger, plus the Carrie Lake story, and I'll play some clips for you of the bribery that seemed to go down last year. But the timing seems suspect to me. So we'll get Mike Koeniger to talk about both of those stories for you at 30 past the hour. We will, of course, share the links in the show notes for you at the top of the hour at the stationofthecross.com/ACT. By the way, I saw this morning that the Anglican Archbishop of Canterbury, Justin Welby, was able to use St. Bartolomeo to the Basilica there to have his communion service. Scandal? I mean, that's just, whenever that happens, it creates scandal because we're using sacred space for non-Catholic services. Why are we doing this? Anyway, 6 nuns. This is good news. 6 nuns that were taken hostage in Haiti have been released. So let's give God praise for that today as we begin and as we pray. In the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Ghost. Amen. Remember, O most gracious Virgin Mary, that never was it known that anyone who fled to thy protection, implored thy help, or sought thine intercession was left unaided. Inspired by this confidence, I fly unto thee, O Virgin of Virgins, my mother. To thee do I come, before thee I stand, sinful and sorrowful. O Mother of the Word incarnate, despise not my petitions, but in thy mercy hear and answer me. Amen. In the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Ghost. And now your saint of the day.
Saint Paul, pray for us. Saul of Tarsus was born a few years after Christ, the son of a prominent Pharisee of the tribe of Benjamin. He was also a Roman citizen, with the Latin name Paul. He was educated in the law in Jerusalem by the wise Gamaliel, another future saint, who defended the apostles before the Sanhedrin. He also practiced the trade of tent-making to support himself and keep his body as active as his mind. Like most other Pharisees, Saul was a fierce enemy of the Christians, and he was complicit in the stoning of St. Stephen Protomartyr. St. Augustine credits St. Stephen's intercession for Saul's conversion, which only came after much violent persecution that rendered Saul's name a fear to all Christians. On his way to carry out a great persecution in Damascus, Saul was suddenly struck from his horse by a heavenly light, and the voice of Christ admonished Saul for persecuting the church. Saul was converted on the spot, and remained blind for 3 days in Damascus, during which time he fasted in reparation, until he was baptized by St. Ananias. To reflect his conversion and to better preach to the Gentiles, Saul adopted fully his Roman name, Paul. Today is the feast commemorating his conversion. His martyrdom, on the same day as St. Peter in Rome, is celebrated on June 29th. St. Paul, pray for us.
And now your headline news. Epic Times reports Carrie Lake calls for Arizona GOP chair to resign after leaked audio. Arizona GOP Senate candidate Carrie Lake called for the state's Republican Party chair, Jeff DeWitt, to resign after an audio recording surfaced of him appearing to present Mrs. Lake with an offer of money to leave politics. The recording dates back to last March and features a conversation between the two, and the audio suggests that Arizona GOP chair brought an offer from unspecified, quote, powerful people back east, close quote, in exchange for Mrs. Lake stepping down from the political scene for 2 years. She, of course, rejected the proposal, and he, of course, did resign, but we're going to be playing some clips for you coming up at 30 past. Do stick around. Hey, Breitbart reports another Boeing plane sees critical failure as 757's nose wheel falls off before takeoff. A Delta Airlines Boeing 757 jet taxiing on the runway with 184 passengers on board at Atlanta was forced to abort takeoff when a nose wheel fell off and parted ways with the stricken flight. Delta said in a statement, quote, all customers and their bags were removed from the aircraft, transferred to the gate, and onto a replacement aircraft, close quote. The plane was fixed and put back into service the next day. On January the 5th, after the Alaska Airlines jet had a door plug blow out at 16,000 feet, the FAA grounded 171 Boeing 737 MAX 9s and started an investigation. Additionally, U.S. Secretary of State Anthony Blinken was grounded in Switzerland last Wednesday after his Boeing plane had a critical failure due to an oxygen leak. Not looking good for Boeing right now. Catholic Vote reports Bishop says the abortion is centerpiece of the Biden campaign. Bishop Michael Burbidge of Arlington blasted Biden for the pro-abortion rally he held in Virginia this week, calling it, quote, incredibly devastating, quote, that Biden would place choice over his sacred duty to protect life, close quote. President Biden has made abortion the centerpiece of his campaign, Burbidge wrote. At a rally in Manassas, Virginia, he advocated for codifying Roe v. Wade into law. In fact, I would say he wanted it up to birth. Let that sink in. Those are your headline news. The gospel today comes to us from Mark 16, verses 15 through 18. Jesus appeared to the 11 and said to them, go into the whole world and proclaim the gospel to every creature. Whoever believes and is baptized will be saved. Whoever does not believe will be condemned. These signs will accompany those who believe. In my name, they will drive out demons. They will speak new languages. They will pick up serpents with their hands. And if they drink any deadly thing, it will not harm them. They will lay hands on the sick, and they will recover. The gospel of the Lord. Praise to you, Lord Jesus Christ. You know, I'm still reeling and pinching myself that I got to go pray at the tomb of St. Paul on his feast day today. Just remembering my trip back in late October, early November to Rome. The documentary film, I don't know if you've seen it, but I produced and released a documentary film called The Secret of the Saints in the End Times. And I take you to not only on the journey from the prison cell to his execution to his burial and more. You can watch that for free. Well, maybe we'll throw a link to it in the show notes. But one of the best places to see it is right on the iCatholic Radio mobile app and the ICR Premium Plus icon in the bottom right there. Click that. You'll be able to gain access to it and just click play. But Haydock's Catholic Bible Commentary said, quoting St. Gregory the Great, perhaps someone will say within himself, I have already believed. I shall be saved. He says true, if his faith be supported by good works. For that only is true faith, which does not contradict in works what is believed in words. Father McKeevely goes on to say, our Lord now commissions his apostles and arms them with full authority to go forth and preach the gospel to every creature under heaven, without let or hindrance from any earthly power, to go forth as his immediate representatives, deriving their power directly and immediately from him and from no one else, who is the sovereign Lord and creator of the universe, to whom belongs the earth and its fullness, by whom kings reign and lawgivers decree justice. He is to be ever with them. Whoever opposes them opposes him and his divine ordinances. Woe to those who oppose him in them. Look at that. First God, then his apostles, then any earthly power. Let's get that straight. But the commentary goes on to say, but he that believeth not the gospel preached by the apostles and their legitimate successors shall be condemned. It matters not whether he be rich or poor, learned or unlearned, young or old, king or subject. Infallible truth is pledged to it. The judge of the living and the dead has decreed it. The Savior of all mankind has made it an indispensable condition for all, in order to be partakers of the fruits of his redemption, that they must have faith. Faith conceived only from the preaching of those legitimately sent. You don't just get to make it up on your own. You got to be sent. The commentary goes on. If the preaching of others would suffice to engender faith, why should the preaching of the apostles be necessary to reach every creature? On this account, it is the apostles tell us that while faith comes from hearing, it is from hearing those only who are legitimately sent. To those alone who have a legitimate mission from the apostles and their successors in God's church can the words apply, how beautiful are the feet of them that preach the gospel of peace, and of them that bring glad tidings of good things. See, for instance, Romans 10:15. He calls miracles signs or proofs of the doctrines which they wrought to establish. This he adds to remove any feeling of defendants which illiterate fishermen might have had in preaching. The signs brought about that first generation, and we persevere through those gifts yet today. We'll be right back. Praise be to Jesus Christ. Welcome back to A Catholic Take, a bold synthesis of information and inspiration. I'm your host, Joe McClain. It's good to be on with you. Coming up at 30 past the hour, Mike Koeniger joins us, our friend of the show, and we're going to be talking about these two big stories. One is Texas, the Texas border. The other is the Carrie Lake, what is this, bribery video that's come out, this clip. We're going to play a little bit of that for you at 30 past. The timing of that seems a little suspicious to me, but we'll get Mike Koeniger to weigh in on that. But did you catch Javier Milei's speech at the World Economic Forum last week? I see a great article here from Dr. Scott Ventureyra, who has a PhD in theology and philosophy. He's also the author of COVID-19, a Dystopian Delusion, examining the machinations of governments, health organizations, the globalist elites, big pharma, big tech, and the legacy media. Boy, that's a mouthful, and I love it. Dr. Ventureyra joins us now. Good morning to you. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for having me on.
Let's talk about Javier Milei. First, I find it interesting, and I did talk to a friend of the show, Andreas Weiler from LifeSite News, about the World Economic Forum Davos event. One of the things that stood out to me, and I'd like to get your take on this, is I don't recall in past years them inviting sort of anti-WEF, anti-Davos, anti-globalist voices to participate. Is that new, or have I just missed it?
I've never seen anything like it. So for me, this was intriguing just to listen to Javier Milei's speech. It was a wrecking ball for the WEF and its agenda. And the only other person that seemed to be a dissident at the conference was Kevin Roberts of the Heritage Foundation. So it was also nice to see him. He was very articulate himself as well.
Yes, exactly. So why would they do that then? What do you think the play is there? Are they being sincere? Are they just opening the conversation up to all voices to get a fuller picture? Or is there anything else behind the scenes?
It's a great question. I sometimes listen to this person, David Icke, who's considered the height of conspiracy theory, and he thinks there's some kind of agenda behind Milei. I'm not convinced of his view on this. But what I say is to let things unfold and see how he proceeds with his promises. Is he going to be like the standard politician, or is he actually going to fulfill some of these things? So I say we should wait and see. But now, it is suspicious that they gave him a platform.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, it's something that worth thinking about. Why are they giving him a platform to wreck their whole agenda? But maybe to show, look how extremist this guy can be. But But I think people that listen to it can see how reasonable he is.
I've known Kevin Roberts for a number of years. I'm not close or anything, but I've known him for a number of years, and I can vouch for his integrity, personally. So I can't do the same thing for Javier Milei, but I find it very fascinating that all of a sudden you've got these two voices in the midst of these globalists. And could you do me a favor real quick? You do this in your article, but can you summarize essentially what is the globalist platform that we see coming out of the WEF?
So essentially what you see is the promotion of, these ideologies like climate change, gender ideology, what they call the Great Reset. So I talk about this in the book COVID-19, A Dystopian Delusion. And I talk about what Klaus Schwab and Thierry Malloret write about, which is stakeholder capitalism. And I think that's just a fancy term for a global socialism implemented through fascistic methods. So that's the intertwinement of big corporation with big government. And so you see that all throughout the world. And what's interesting, I think one of the key issues here was about information and misinformation and disinformation. And it's right in the title, right, of the conference, right?
We were talking with Dr. Scott Ventureyra about his article, Javier Milei, A Thorn in the Globalist Side. We're going to put a link to this article as well as scottventureyra.com and his website in our show notes today over at thestationofthecross.com/ACT. Let me ask you this question, just as a sort of a follow-up question here is, how does Javier Milei contrast to that globalist agenda that you talk about in your article? I mean, he is an enigma, whether you like, and I'm not sure I like him. I'm going to be honest with you. Total transparency. Right. I don't know that I can personally trust him. He seems a little weird to me, but nonetheless, he is in great contrast coming out of Argentina, coming out of the era of liberation theology. I mean, so many prelates in the church, His Holiness Pope Francis himself seems to embrace the WF. Javier Milei from his own home country is a total contrast to that. That's an enigma. How do we explain this?
Well, what's interesting is that to understand Javier Milei is to understand the Austrian school of economics, where there's a focus on the individual. There's this kind of radical idea where to understand this is to understand the economic values of goods and services that are inherently subjective. So what your friend may value or preference for a certain good may not hold that much value for yourself. So this understanding rests on inclinations and actions of individuals and just their subjective preferences and desires. So this is contrasted with the Keynesian school of economics, which does not really take into account these things. So, for Austrian school of economics, capital goods are not homogeneous, but they're rather heterogeneous. So Keynesian economics, which treats each of these in the same fashion, and Javier Milei thinks that the Austrian school of economics can lead to an understanding through the production of incorrect capital goods can lead to an unwanted waste. He thinks that the Keynesian style of economics will lead to all these potential failures and that require corrective measures from the government. So I think it's an innovative way of thinking about economics that could lead to unique solutions that could benefit countries in perhaps ways that other models can't. And I think another key thing to understand Javier Milei is to understand his disdain for the Frankfurt School, the birthing of critical theory, which is a stem from cultural Marxism.
Yeah.
So he also discusses that in his speech, right? The failures of classical Marxism led to cultural Marxism. And so now you see, the prevalence of wokeism and pitting individuals against each other. Black Lives Matters, black people against white people, men against women, even the climate against humanity. So it's all about these divisions, right? These dichotomies. And so, the whole saying about first you divide and then you conquer, right? So I think that's part of the globalist agenda. Also, this whole thing about population control, which he touches upon as well. And I found it fascinating, even in another interview, he gave an interview with Tucker Carlson. I found it fascinating, his defense of life. It was much stronger than I've heard of many Christians or even the Pope providing. So I find that a curious thing as well. But he's a defender of life. He's a defender of truth, apparently. And he's a defender of a different economic model that centers the individual over the collective.
So, I mean, again, he's just such an enigma and a contrast. That's what's hard. Like, it just seems strange to see someone like this saying all these things come out of a place that breeds the complete opposite to that. I mean, just generally speaking. So that is interesting, to be sure. He's promoting capitalism, and I wonder how it's going. Because if I'm not mistaken, there are big protests going on that are being planned by his opposition right now in Argentina. So is he going to be able to actually move the needle in Argentina with all of these thoughts and ideas? Is he going to be able to change the way and the culture and the system that has been embedded there for so many decades now? Do you think he's going to be effective in that regard?
That's why I say we have to wait and see. But one of the things that's fascinating is that he was elected on a platform that says he's going to take away things from you. He's going to take away the social benefits. He's not telling you, I'm going to hand out money to you. I'm not going to give you these benefits. He's saying, I'm going to take this away, but I'm going to make you prosperous. So that's what makes him unique. I think that's the first time in Western history that somebody gets elected telling you that they're going to take things away from you. And so it's important to understand the history of Argentina as well. Argentina was one of the most prosperous countries in the Western Hemisphere for many years. But then slowly but surely, because of government intervention, that started to decline. It's obviously, there's many complex reasons for why this happened. But there's a dissatisfaction with the Argentinian population. And he talks about this in his speech at the WEF. He says that it's a test case. If you guys don't smarten up in other Western countries, you're going to follow suit. And I'm in Canada, and I see that happening with hyperinflation. And so the rising prices of real estate, of any kind of food products, everything is just, the gas is on the rise. It's just, it's an insane time to be living. And it's very hard to cope for the average person. So I think that Milei's message is a welcome one throughout the Western world, because there's been a loss of hope. Yeah. And given the history of Argentina, how much lower are they going to go? What do they have to lose? And so in Canada, I see things going to the direction of Argentina, not even just for economically, but it's like the censorship is rampant.
Yes,
we have
big pushback on Justin Trudeau. Big pushback on Justin Trudeau right now. How is that going? You got about a minute left in our conversation, but I'd love to switch to Canada just for a second. Do you see Canada changing? Do you see the winds of political change happening in your country?
I think a couple of days ago, when the Emergencies Act was ruled unconstitutional, it was one of the first snippets I've seen of hope, aside from the truckers arriving in Ottawa a couple of years ago. I think this may be a pivotal moment, but they're going to appeal. And I don't have too much faith in the legal system after what I've seen over the last 3 years. But I'm optimistic that this might be, a pivotal shift into the right direction. But time will tell only.
Well, I find it very fascinating that we're seeing people like Javier Milei crop up around the world, push back on the globalist agenda. Is it too late? Let me ask you that question. Do you think that the elite, you make this point, it's not the 1%ers in Davos, it's the 1% of the 1%. With about 30 seconds left on the clock, do you think we are too late to change things, or is it still time?
I'm optimistic. I think there's still time, but I think that window is closing ever surely. And I'll close with one quote from a Canadian folk singer. You got to kick at the darkness till it please the light. So you got to keep fighting. Keep fighting against them. Don't give up.
Amen. Well said. Dr. Scott Ventureyra, we appreciate your time today. I'm very grateful for your time. Thank you so much. We're going to link to his website over at scottventureyra.com. Check that out. Or his article at Crisis Magazine, crisismagazine.com. Javier Milei, a thorn in the globalist side. God bless you, Dr. Ventureyra. Hope to have you back soon. Don't go anywhere. We're going to talk about Carrie Lake in Texas and breaking news. It's all coming up next.
The Station of the Cross has many ways to keep you informed about our programming. You can view the highlights of our primetime programming schedule or the full 24/7 programming grid at both thestationofthecross.com or the free iCatholic Radio app. Just search under the Programming tab. Our website also offers a printable version for your convenience.
Praise be to Jesus Christ. Welcome back to A Catholic Take, a bold synthesis of information and inspiration. I'm your host, Joe McClain, and here are your headline news. The Pillar reports Vatican Appeals Court finds pre-seminary rector guilty of corrupting minors. The Vatican City Court of Appeals has found Father Gabriele Martinelli, the former rector of a pre-seminary in the city-state, guilty of corruption of a minor. Martinelli has received a sentence of 2.5 years in prison and a €1,000 fine. Martinelli has repeatedly denied these allegations, and the ruling partially overturns a lower court's 2021 decision, which acquitted the priest due to insufficient evidence. The 31-year-old priest had been accused of repeated sexual abuse of the Pius X pre-seminary students, or 12 to 18-year-old boys, where they live and discern the priesthood. The boys also serve at the papal mass. The Hill reports 2 U.S.-flagged cargo ships attacked off Yemen. Shipping giant Maersk said in a statement to The Hill that Maersk Detroit and Maersk Chesapeake were attacked during the transit through a strait which connects Red Sea to the Gulf of Aden. The strait is a major targeting point for the Houthi rebels. The ships were under a U.S. Navy escort which intercepted multiple rounds of fire. Neither vessel was damaged in the attack, and the crews of both ships are unharmed. Catholic Vote reports Ohio nixes DeWine's veto protects kids. Ohio on Wednesday became the latest state to adopt legislation protecting minors from being subjected to so-called gender-affirming care after the state Senate overrode a veto issued by Republican Governor Mike DeWine. The comprehensive new measure will now go into effect in 90 days. Republican. What are they conserving again? Remind me one more time. Just remind me. What are they conserving again? Anyway, those are your headline news. Praise be to God. Hey, check out this clip from Carrie Lake over at CPAC.
Something happened to me this week before I left for CPAC, and it shows how desperate these people are to stop me and to silence you. I decided to share this. It's a little bit controversial, but I'm going to put this out. Somebody showed up at my door this week. They called me before and said, I got to talk to you in person. This can't be done over the phone, which is always kind of like, uh-oh, what's that going to be about? They came to my door and they tried to bribe me out of getting out of politics.
Wow.
It's really happened. I'm telling you this because this is how disgusting politics is. A mom who runs for office and they're afraid of me?
Let's find out. Let's play a little clip from the actual exchange between Carrie Lake and the GOP head in Arizona.
Is there a number at which
I can be bought?
not be bought?
That's what it's about.
You can take a pause for a couple of years.
No.
And then go right back to what you're doing.
No. 10 million, 20 million, 30, no. $1 billion, no.
This is stunning audio between the two. And I'd like to get Mike Koeniger, friend of the show, affectionately called the Brick Wall, to join us. A retired Coast Guardsman, by the way, a Coastie. When I read the story, Mike, welcome back to the show. Good morning. When I read the story of the 2 Maersk ships, did you have flashbacks, old memories of seafaring, chasing down the pirates on the high seas days, or did you go into cold sweats?
I'm at that age where I have flashbacks about all kinds of the insane things I did that I go back and say, what on earth was I thinking? The Coast Guard certainly was an adrenaline rush. I didn't jump out of airplanes or do any of that nonsense. I had the Coast Guard to give me all that.
Exactly. Yes. So we'll have to talk about old coastie stories. I have a few too, actually. Maybe we'll do that in the after show. But let's jump into this story first before we talk about Texas. Carrie Lake issuing this audio clip. She clearly recorded this exchange between the GOP head in Arizona, who's now resigned, actually. The clip itself, if you listen to the full thing, we'll link to it in the show notes at thestationofthecross.com, as well as her CPAC speech. What is your take? What is your initial reaction to this bombshell news?
It was funny because when I watched the clip and or listened to the clip, because you're just getting the audio part, and the first shock I had was this guy said, well, it was just a conversation among friends. Now, if he was truly Carrie Lake's friend, he would have known that she couldn't be bribed. She seems to be very, very secure in what she is and what she believes in. And, the comment that hit me, and I won't forget, Joe, is 10 million, 50 million, a billion, I'm not for sale. And I'm worried about my country. Now, there's some profanities in this clip, but they've been bleeped out, so if folks listen to it, they won't hear the profanities. But I was just shocked. Well, honestly, this is a woman of character. Character's doing what's right when nobody's watching, and there was nobody watching. I mean, this guy's coming to her with bags and bags of money, not literally, but figuratively at the very least. And she's saying, I'm doing this for my kids. And I am not a lover of either political party, much like yourself, but I would vote for this woman in good conscience because when she was under pressure, she picked the right door. She picked door number 1 and not door number 2. And so I was very impressed with her level of character, to be honest. Wow. Am I shocked? Am I shocked that she was being bribed? No. I'm sure it happens every day in this country, and that's just sad. But I am more shocked that there are still people, not shocked, I'm happily surprised that there are more people of this level of character that just say, no way. And she's probably not the only one. The former congressman from Texas, Ron Paul, he couldn't be bought. We know that from a lot of the stories that we're now finding out. And there have been others. Those two come to mind immediately, though. So
let me just push back a little bit. Okay, I don't disagree with what you said, but at the same time, one red flag definitely came up in the back of my mind as I looked at this story, listened to the audio, what have you, and that's on the timing of things. Now, so she gets a call. She said in the CPAC speech, I get a call, so-and-so wants to come visit. They're knocking on my door, going to be there in 10 minutes. Oh, well, this is interesting. So I get it. You pull out your phone, you hit record, you got it on standby and ready because you don't know what you're about to face, but you know something's fishy because your red flags are going off. Fair enough. Got it. No problem. Then you wait a whole year to tell anybody. I don't know. So she may be telling the truth. She may be a person of great character and proud of her for saying, I can't be bought. But I don't like the fact, and I felt this way about the Vigano story as well. It's not that I disbelieve Vigano. It's that I didn't like the fact that he put on drip the information he wanted to release. I felt very manipulated as a result to that timing of things. Do you sense that here? Like, why wait a whole year to tell anybody about this slimy? And if you listen to the dude, like, it just feels so slimy. Hey, like, all right, so this conversation never exists. Hey, don't tell anybody, all right? Okay, it's that they want you on there. It's like I felt like a used car salesman was trying to pitch me a Pinto from 18,000 years ago with only one cylinder working left. It was very, got to take a shower after, but a year? Why wait a year?
I had the same question, and I think oftentimes people are afraid that the character assassination is going to start. This modern media where you don't believe your lying eyes and you don't believe your lying ears because despite the fact that we've heard it, they're going to somehow spin it. And by the way, Joe, this guy tried to spin this. He did try to spin this before he resigned. And I think her fear was she was going up against a big giant machine. And folks they call it the uniparty for a reason. I think the tactics are the same across the board. And by the way, Joe, I tend to vote to the right more often than not. So I'm not attacking the other party. I'm attacking the party I tend to align with on some issues. Of course, as a Catholic man, it's hard to have any party to align to in the modern age. But yeah, I think there was probably a level of fear. But maybe I'm the optimist. It's funny that today you're more cynical than I am, Joe. Usually it's the opposite.
I'm here to serve you, Mike. I'm here to serve you. Hey, let me. You brought up the whole he tried to spin it thing. Let me just hit on that for a second. So the article that we're going to be linking to today, Arizona GOP chairman resigns amid Carrie Lake bribery allegations from the Epic Times. The link will be in the show notes at thestationofthecross.com/ACT. But this is what he said yesterday in his resignation statement, Jeff DeWitt, saying, quote, "I said things I regret, but I realized when hearing Lake's recording that I was set up," close quote, Mr. DeWitt said in a statement, going on to say, quote, "I believe she orchestrated this entire situation to have control over the state party, and it's obvious from the recording that she crafted her performance responses with the knowledge that she was recording it, intending to use this recording later to portray herself as a hero," close quote. Now, I am not giving Mr. DeWitt a pass, okay? Again, very slimy. The whole thing but let's talk about her for a second. She's a seasoned television reporter. She knows how to put on the performance when the time comes. I'm not saying she faked it. What I'm saying is she knows what she's doing. She's smart. So she knows there's something coming to her door. She doesn't know what it is. Red flag here. Pull out the phone. We said that. Turn it on. And yeah, I 100% agree with him. She did turn this on. She did craft her performances. They might have been sincere, but they were still crafted. They were still thought through ahead of time, and she was ready to go. Again, I go back to, do two wrongs make a right? If there's a wrong that happened here under Mr. DeWitt and the powerful people back east, is there a second wrong in her putting that chip in her back pocket and waiting to play it at the appropriate time that gives her the biggest bang for the buck? Feels manipulated. I just want to repeat that because I think it's important. So he spun it, but at the same time, I think he has a point.
Oh, I don't disagree, Joe. I think she knew exactly what she was up to. She's obviously very clever. She's obviously very smart. And so I don't disagree with anything you said. The $1 billion, that was certainly played for the audience that she knew was going to be listening to this recording. But in the end, yes, I think it was a performance. I think she got them right where she wanted them and was happy to leverage that to get them out of her way. But again, what are they afraid of with her? And that is what I keep saying. What is it that made them this afraid? I don't think the Republicans love her any more than they love Marjorie Taylor Greene or Donald Trump or the guy from Kentucky, the hillbilly elegy guy. I can't remember his name right now. Or Ohio. I think he's from Ohio. I don't think they love any of these guys because they're not part of the machine. And so I don't even like, I'm not a big Trump guy, certainly not a Biden guy either. But, I think that there is something going on within American politics. And by the way, I grew up just south of that horrible city on the East Coast. So
let me ask you that. Let me ask you that. Who do you think? Do you any speculation on the powerful people back east? Carrie, when I was listening to Carrie Lake say, all right, so, and she's chewing on something. Hey, so who are we talking about here? Okay. Who is this? And he's like, hey, listen, let me not name names. Okay. Let me just talk about the offer. Okay. Again, just the whole thing, super slimy. But do you have any speculation on who the powerful people back east are?
Well, certainly the chairman of the Republican Party, who, by the way, abandoned Virginia this past year in 2023 and allowed the Democrats to regain control of the House of Delegates because she was angry with our governor. Certainly that, and the big money. It's the money. The powerful people back east aren't the senators and the congressmen. It's the money that pays for them. And, this representative democracy or representative republic we live in, they don't represent you and me. They represent their donors. And so those are the powerful people back east. These are the same people right now that are telling you that Nikki Haley is the best candidate to go up against Biden, even though the polling data says the people that are voting for Nikki Haley aren't even Republicans, right? So it's
What are they conserving? I mean, the Ohio governor wants kids to be subjected to trans, and Nikki Haley gets more non-Republican voters to vote for her than anything. Like, what are they conserving? Like, stop it. They should not be allowed to claim conservative if you aren't actually conserving anything. It just drives me
they're conserving their mechanism to make money, Joe.
Speaking of walls, driving me up a wall. Speaking of walls, coming up after the break, let's talk Texas. Governor Greg Abbott laying down the law on the wall, and the states that are lining up to support Texas. Woo! 1861, anyone? Are we there? Are we going to see it? Is it a day late and a dollar short? Is it just more political talk and a lot of air and not a lot of action? I don't know. Mike Koeniger is going to weigh in on all of that coming up right after this quick break. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back. Praise be to Jesus Christ. Welcome back to A Catholic Take, a bold synthesis of information and inspiration. I'm your host, Joe McClain. So good to be on with you. We're taking a poll from our last segment. Javier Milei down in Argentina. Do you trust the guy? What do you think? Right now, according to the poll over on the YouTubes, yes, 24%, 19% say no, 57% say not sure. So let me know if you want to vote for that. You can get in on that action over at the stationofthecross.com/ACT, where you can find not only the show notes being posted at the top of the hour, you can get merch, join the email list, join the insider crew, get the podcast, but you can also watch the live video stream. And just underneath that is the icons where you can comment and hang out with us, to include the YouTube, which means you can comment, you can take the poll, and you can hang out in the after show coming up at the top of the hour. Mike Koeniger is our guest. We're talking about some of these big stories. Carrie Lake, last segment. Let's talk about Texas. People's Republic of Texas, as some call it. God's country, some other people might say, where I was raised anyway. And the governor has put out this very strong response to now what we see as the Supreme Court ruling 5-4 against Texas putting up barbed wire. Basically, allowing the federales, can I call them federales? The federal agents to cut the barbed wire to get it out of the way so that illegal immigrants can cross just about anywhere they want rather than crossing at the prescribed checkpoints. What is your take on this story?
Well, first off, the Supreme Court didn't really rule against Texas as in a proper hearing. They stayed an injunction that did not allow the federals to remove the barbed wire that had been laid. The one thing that did, though, what the circuit court did for Texas, it allowed Texas to lay a whole lot of barbed wire out without the federals coming in behind it and pulling it out. And so I know you listened to the same video clip I did regarding this decision, so you know that they said basically there's so much barbed wire out there, it's going to take them forever to get rid of it. So I have some hope there. My take on this is that the federal government, and by the way, this was a mission I was very involved in during my Coast Guard career, we called it Alien Migration Interdiction Operations back then. I don't think that's
that's a mouthful. Now. That's a mouthful.
Yes, but it is a mission I was very involved in. I'm sure they changed the name because that's certainly not touchy-feely, or woke. But yeah, it's a serious mission. But the feds have basically just. And I'm not attacking ICE. I'm not attacking the Border Patrol. I think they've been handcuffed and by the Biden administration. And so, if the numbers are to be believed, somewhere between 6 and 10 million have come across that border in the last 3 years. That is significant. And by the way, Joe, I say this every time we talk about this issue. I am the son of immigrants, and I always say this.
Well, we all are.
Well, no, I'm actually not the grandson. I am the son of immigrants. My parents were immigrants to this country. And so I have a heart for immigrants. And I do believe on the whole, Immigrants contribute to our society in positive ways. You're not eating fruit or vegetables that haven't been touched by immigrants. You're probably not living in a house that wasn't built by immigrants. The people who re-roofed my house here a couple years ago were all not from the U.S. So I certainly understand both sides of this issue, but Texas is protecting the private property of people who live on the border. And that's what's forgotten is these people are being deprived of the use of their property and are being stolen from by people who come across the border and use that property as if it were their own and destroy property. And a lot of those folks that live on the border are of Hispanic heritage of some sort or another.
That's right.
And so this is not the racial issue the media wants to make it out to be. It is, does the state of Texas have a duty to protect its citizens? And
let alone the terrorists that are coming across that border that they find, and they only catch a glimpse of it. It's just scratching the surface, tip of the iceberg, so to speak, because there's so many gotaways that they don't even know who is in the country. There could be all kinds of terrorists in the country as a result of that. Here's a quote from the letter from Texas Governor Greg Abbott. It says, under President Biden's lawless border policies, more than 6 million illegal immigrants have crossed our southern border in just 3 years. That is more than the population of 33 different states in this country. This illegal refusal to protect the states has inflicted unprecedented harm on the people of all across the United States, close quote, Governor Greg Abbott. So I guess one of the questions that I'm really struggling with in this is it a day late and a dollar short? I mean, why didn't we do this 3-4 years ago? That's one of my questions. And we're seeing states now line up in support of Texas. I'm not exactly sure of what support they're lending. Are they lending National Guard troops? Is it a concertina wire that they're giving? Material support? Just, moral support? I have no idea. But we are starting to see a map of division in our country that potentially we might not have seen since the 1860s. What say you, Mike Koeniger?
I'm certainly concerned. I think we're very divided. We've seen this happen in American history. It does happen on occasion. The support during World War I was another time where we were heavily divided prior to the U.S. entry into the war. And by the way, if folks don't remember, Woodrow Wilson did imprison political dissenters during the First World War. So it has been as bad, at least in our history. But to your point, it tends to fall on these lines where it is the southern part of the U.S. And then some of the western states that tend to align against the northeastern elite. And I use that term on purpose, Joe, northeastern elite. As a man who has a great love for this, I have a great love for the state of New Hampshire, which you've heard me wax poetic about constantly. So
sure.
I'm not picking. But yes, I do see that there's a division here. And the division, let's set aside the politics of this. Who is most impacted by this immigration? And it is the southern states. That's where
I don't know. Tell that to the mayor of New York City, who's complaining about it every day.
Well, he reaped what he sowed. So it's, that was the thing. The last thing Abbott did before this letter was the shipping some of the immigrants to these sanctuary cities, which I thought was politically a funny move, but it was really, I don't know that meant anything other than, hey, if you're going to vote for sanctuary. But he's been really quiet since then, Joe. And this is, I'm not a Texan. I want to root for Abbott, but he tends to get quiet and then all of a sudden do something. We saw the same thing during COVID where he was very quiet much longer than he probably should have been.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, it boggles the mind here. Okay, listen, the history of humanity is the history of immigration. No one is exempt from this. Every single person all of their origins have immigration in their background, without exception. So, but that doesn't mean then we throw common sense out the door. You got to do things in an orderly way, because otherwise the system gets overwhelmed, and then how is anybody helped in the process? So there are legal systems through which people can immigrate. And that is what we need. Now, the question is, do those legal systems need to be overhauled? Do they need to be looked at or thought through again? Potentially. Yeah, maybe. That might be true. So let's do that rather than just open the borders. But the reality is we're not talking about that. That's just the talking points that we are given. Rather, there's an agenda here for open borders and free for all because, maybe it's to replace the population. Maybe it's the vote that they're after or control. I don't know. I can't read Klaus's mind at the moment. But nonetheless, it just seems to boggle the mind that how common sense thinking people, no matter where they fall in the political perspective, seem to buy into all this rather than to go, I think there really ought to be tight border security with maybe some generous immigration policy. But they never go for that. They never go for that. Instead, it's cut the wires down, and how dare Texas and all of these states want to defend their borders against this? Because let me tell you, just down the street from me right now is the largest illegal immigration colony in America, and it is the wild, wild west over there. It really, really is. How is that good?
God bless everyone.
How is that good for anybody? That's the question. We'll carry that conversation through in the after show. Mike Koeniger, thank you for your input today. Hopefully you can hang out with us in the after show, and we'll continue on. We're going to get your take on it. Whatever you want to offer up on either of the segments today or anything we've talked about, you're welcome to do so in the after show at the stationofthecross.com/ACT. Also, the iCatholic Radio app is a great place to be. Download it in your app store today. We'll be right back. We'll see you in a minute.
And we are back. Welcome to the after show, everyone.
Hey,
we ran out of time, Joe. We ran out of time again.
I lost power last night in the middle of the night, so I didn't get a lot of sleep last night because we were dealing with that. But so didn't manage the clock all that well today. But hey, we have birthdays today, by the way. We have some birthdays to celebrate. Female KC Royals fan, I think it's your birthday today. Praise be to God. Happy birthday to you. And Luz from our insider crew says her youngest is 10 today, officially. 10. We're talking double digits. Welcome to the double digit gang, Angel Gabriel. So praise be to God. Happy birthday to you as well. Jake, you were gonna sing in Swahili if I'm not mistaken. You had that memorized, right?
Swahili.
This is the first I've heard of it.
He's a linguist. Speaks all languages.
What's the clicking
all the time?
The clicking language. I forget the name. Yeah.
What language is that? By the way?
I don't know if you're allowed to say that on the air, Joe.
Beep.
I think we need to bleep Joe's
beep
clicks.
that one out. Oh man, yeah. Okay, now it's total rabbit hole, which is actually one of the phrases on the Insider Cup, which I need to replace in 2024. You reminded me the guy we had on, the DNA scientist guy. That guy,
I remember him. He was great.
Jensen. He's not a fan of the Catholic faith. He's an evangelical anti-Catholic, probably, but nonetheless, a great interview. And he talks about he follows the language groups. The people are broken up by language group, and he follows those and overlays DNA evidence on top of that, and then overlays biblical text on top of that to draw some conclusions. And when he talked about that of sub-Saharan Africa,
yeah,
they have a completely separate background, different background than the Nigerians and the what do you call that coastline of Africa?
Ivory Coast?
I forget. Coast? Thank you. Ivory Coast. The Gulf Coast. Yeah. So he says Europeans have more in common with than they do with Nigeria.
Well,
I find that fascinating.
That's a lot like in Europe. The Basque language is unrelated to any language around it, and Hungarian and Finnish are very unique as well. I think those are usually
Finnish is the one that Tolkien wrote about in his real job as Finnish is just an oddball, and he based the Elfin language off of it because it was so odd. But yeah, it's fascinating. And by the way, I think that guy is part of Ken Ham's Answers in Genesis crew.
Yes,
so
exactly.
They're certainly not pro-Catholic, but I found him fascinating. I read his. I found his book I read his book. It had a lot of science in it, but it was very readable, and so I thought it was really well done.
It is fascinating. Hey, by the way,
it relates to our conversation, Joe, about immigration. It really does.
Right. And to that point, let me just ask you this deep, profound journalistic question here: if you're American going into the restroom, What are you in the restroom?
You're European.
And then what are you when you come out?
Oh, I don't know this one. Go ahead. Tell me.
Finnish.
Okay. Which is
just-
still European, by the way.
Just saying. Oh, darn it. Technicalities. Hey, good morning to you, female KC Royals fan. What do you do on your birthday, female KC Royals fan? Do you from Nebraska? So what are we talking about? And you're from Nebraska? You're a KC Royals fan? Really?
What is the baseball team in Nebraska, Joe?
Do you like python hunt, alligator wrestling? Like what do you do on your birthday? I'm just pick up deadly venomous spiders and then let them crawl on you. Like what do you do on your birthday? I'm just curious. Let me know. Patricia, good morning to you. Jay is on the team. Let's see here. Colleen, Sharon, Yvonne, Surprised Puppies is in the house. Good morning to you. Chesty Marine is on the team here. Catherine Hickey, good morning to you, Catherine Hickey. You said something super controversial earlier, and I can't even remember what it was now. I got to go back and look. It wasn't really that controversial, really. Round one, good morning to you. Diane Stroud, good morning to you. Praise be to God. Glad you're here. Frank Rangel. Andrea, good morning to you. Andrea Anthony, good morning to you. What was Catherine worried about getting banned for? What'd she say?
She was just she was calling out the stonecutters, and she was worried.
Google
might
the
ban
founding
her.
of our country.
Yeah.
Oh yes. You triggered me. Now I remember.
Female KC Royals fan says, "Alligators, Joe. Where do you think Nebraska is?"
What's
apparently just north of Florida?
Yeah.
What is the deadliest creature you have in Nebraska? You have snakes in Nebraska? You have venomous snakes in Nebraska? I bring up the alligator thing because I was watching Matt Fradd. You guys watch Pints with Aquinas at all ever? He interviewed that comedian who's basically converted to the Catholic faith. The guy who's got tattoos all over, Seth or something like that. I went and watched a bunch of his comedy, his dry bar comedy. It was hilarious. And he was telling a story about a man who robbed a Wendy's with an alligator in Florida. True story. It was hilarious.
By the way, Joe, the deadliest creature in Nebraska is the same deadliest creature as Texas, is the same deadliest creature as South Africa. It's the mosquito.
A liberal? Oh,
the
sorry, mosquito. Sorry.
The mosquito is the deadliest creature on Earth. So, but hey, I can't even pick on the liberals because I can't tell the difference between the liberals and the conservatives anymore. So
the mosquito, they spray where I live. They spray with airplanes to kill the mosquitoes, and then they drive trucks around the neighborhood spraying. What do you think that chemical does? Do you think it makes for healthy people?
When I was a kid, you used to run behind the truck and get in the cloud. So no wonder I have all these twitches now.
That explains a few things, Mike. I'm going to be honest with you. Now I'm starting to put the puzzle pieces together. Okay, I don't got to watch InfoWars now because now I know what causes that. Hey, NCJR. I left a letter out there. NCJR. Good morning. Christ is King. Yeah, amen to that. Praise be to God. Viva Cristo Rey, looking good, Mike. NCJR says. Awesome.
Oh,
Lynn Pine is on the team today. I'm glad you're here today. Also, Cherokee Woman 20, Cherokee Woman 20, and James 16897, Honey West 25, and Sci-Fi Mike. Good morning on Rumble. Patty, good morning to you. Jane, good morning to you. Praise be to God. Glad you guys are here. Thanks for hanging out with us today. Junior Barra. Holding it down. Hey, by the way, that poll is at 22% say Javier Milei is trustworthy. 17% say no. 60% are not sure. Where are you at with that, Mike Koeniger?
I don't trust any politician, Joe. So
yeah, I'm not sure I do either.
He might espouse the correct beliefs in our Catholic view at the moment, but much like the woman we were talking about the first half of my segment, you never know. You never know. So,
yeah.
I'm certainly in the probably not category.
Pola Chicho, buenos dias, my friend. Thanks for hanging out with us today. Praise be to God. Pola Chicho is a fantastic man. I've known him for years. He's an amazing guy. I'm glad he's here. Liz Finch, good morning to you. Kilroy Jones, good morning to you. Scribbler 007 in the house. Shaken and not stirred, I hope. Master Baker 78, good morning to you. Thanks for hanging out with us today. What were you going to say?
Oh, I'm some of these names, Joe. You know, these are folks that have been with you since the olden days. I was
olden days. Back in my day. By
the way,
go ahead.
Keep rocking. I was just going to say, back in the day when I was a kid, which, you know, was decades and decades and decades ago, I used to go to my dad, who was only 25 when he had me, and say, "Hey, Pop, back in the olden days when you were a kid, what a little, I'm lucky I survived to adulthood."
Exactly. Yes, 100%. Hey, Jessica Boggs, good morning to you. She says, the mosquito is the reason I like winters here in Texas. Yay and amen. You know, we get a bad rap in Texas for being like, I don't know, an inch or two from the surface of the sun. But nonetheless, we get from like now up until April, maybe late April, maybe sometimes the beginning of May, just depends. We get some pretty nice weather. I mean, like pretty nice. So there's a good window there of hey, this isn't that bad. Carl Thomas, good morning to you. Patty says, can you do mosquito wrestling on your birthday in Nebraska? Probably, knowing the Nebraskans, that could be an option, I would imagine. Someone pointed out there are rattlesnakes in Nebraska, I think. I'm not sure who. I got to go back. No, that was round one. Round one. There's rattlesnakes in Nebraska. That's one of the reasons. Reason number 785 why you should love New Hampshire. No rattlesnakes. Praise be to God.
There you go.
Lots of snakes, lots of spiders, but no rattlesnakes.
You know the other wonderful thing that New Hampshire does that most states do not? If you are 100% disabled veteran, you do not pay property tax in the state of New Hampshire.
Praise be to God. Surrounded by insane people, but you know, it is what it is. Hey, Mark, welcome. Mark Fisher, welcome to the team. Welcome to the team. Glad you're here. Thanks for hanging out with us today. Our Lady of Guadalupe brought me to Joe McLean, says Sharon. Well, she knew you needed penance, Sharon. She thought, you know, Sharon, you could use a little extra something. So pain and suffering for you. That's what she did. KP Jack 06, good morning to you.
All I'm going to say, Joe, is if you judge a man by his friends, I'm in trouble, buddy.
You are lost. You are a heathen, obviously. Live free or die in New Hampshire, the Granite State. It is a incredibly beautiful state. If you've never had the opportunity to visit New Hampshire, you know, put it on your list. Go. It's a beautiful place to be. It's quaint. It's got that old, you know, Americana feel to it. You know, old ancient stone walls everywhere, the rolling hills, the trees. It's just incredibly beautiful. It's got mostly decent weather. You know, there's obviously some difficulties in the wintertime, but, you know, the only downside is that northeastern gruff that you find in people in their attitude by default. They don't mean any ill will. It's just they got that. Why do you think that is? Is it just too cold and it just affects them emotionally, Mike? Why is that?
I think it's a remnant of that Puritan culture that settled that area, and even though a lot of those folks are you know, Portuguese immigrants, sons of Portuguese immigrants, I think it was infectious. I found that to be all show though, Joe. The story I tell is we were riding motorcycles in that part of the country and had a breakdown. And I counted, and 27 people stopped to ask if we needed help in a span of less than 15 minutes as we were trying to fix our bike.
Oh, yeah, I'm sure they did.
So
hey,
it
get
appears
that
gruff,
thing off my road, eh?
No, that's not what they said. They said, do you need any help? Joe, stop speaking ill of your former state.
Yeah, I'm just teasing. I'm only teasing. Hey, by the way, David L. says fishing game is tracking rattlesnakes in New Hampshire. What?
Somebody
it's
bring
over.
one in?
It's over. It's done. I'm never going back. Chris Anderson, good morning from Michigan. Go Lions, Chris says. Michigan, praise be to God. Welcome to the team.
Where in Michigan? Where in Michigan?
He doesn't say.
I'd like to know. I lived there once.
I imagine you're required to be a Michigan fan if you're from Michigan.
I lived there. I lived there for 4 years, Joe. You're either Michigan State, so you have choices there. And
speaking of which, I'm reminded today Brent Haynes would have normally been on. Pray for Brent. Specifically, pray for the repose of his brother's soul. Brent is gone to lay his brother to rest today. So if you could keep him in your prayers today. And I thought of Michigan because he is a huge Michigan fan. So pray for Brent today. I'd be grateful to you.
I like Brent despite that.
In spite of it all. Hey, I got to go to Michigan for the first time this past year. I was in Detroit. I went over to Ann Arbor for a conference, and it was lovely. Beautiful state. I would love to spend some time in upper peninsula area. That'd be amazing.
Joe, you didn't even see the prettiest part of the lower peninsula. You get into western Michigan from about St. Joseph's, Michigan, all the way up to about Manistee on that western coast of Michigan. And they have these 200-foot tall sand dunes. They are literally sand dunes on the lake. Oh, yes. And the story I tell was I was stationed there in Grand Haven, Michigan for 4 years, and I came across the dune above a town called Frankfort, Michigan, 820 people, really huge metropolis up there. And I remember coming across the dune, and I looked down, and Lake Michigan is just as blue can be, and the town is nestled there. It's a beautiful spring day, which is May, by the way, in that part of Michigan. Spring is May.
Which is May.
May. I come across that dune, and I just looked down and said, oh, my goodness, is this beautiful? And so even on the lower peninsula, there's just serious beauty. And the UP, once you get across the bridge, the Mackinac Bridge, which, by the way, it's not Mackinac, folks, it's Mackinac. Once you get across the Mackinac Bridge, it just gets prettier and prettier. So,
so good.
And they called them Yoopers. Oh yeah, you betcha.
Yoopers.
Oh yeah, you betcha.
Okay, hey, listen, I just got a new revelation here. My mind is blown. NCJR is actually Nick the Mike from the good and old days.
Oh,
wow. Nick the Mike is on the team today. Now, most of you probably don't know, but back in the day, 4 years ago, actually, I started a program. I guess it's going on 4 years now. Maybe it's just over 3. I don't know. Going on 4 years now, I started what is this format, but with a different apostolate called the Catholic Drive Time, which now has been totally obliterated and blown up and doesn't exist anymore. Yeah. But nonetheless, Nick the Mike was part of the Insider crew back in those days. And so it's good to have you on the team today. Thanks for hanging out with us. We really appreciate it. God bless you.
Now, do you remember why we call Nick the Mike Nick the Mike?
Because there was the Mike Mafia was ruling the show.
Yes, the Mike Mafia ruled. The Mike Mafia ruled one part of the show. I don't know who that would be.
How's that go, Jake? we triggered Jake.
Has such teeth.
That's exactly it. Instead of Mac the Knife, though, it was Mike the Knife. So yes, and Nick came in and jumped in with all these mics, and I said, "Well, that's it. He's an honorary Mike." And so,
remember
the Mike.
Remember, we used to have the Queen of Mics on the program.
She won the watch. She won the watch that we gave away.
She won the watch that you co-sponsored, and we never heard from her after that. Well, she was from Albany, I think.
Yes, what happened? And she was the one who wanted to climb all the 6,000 footers in New York, right?
Maybe she got busy doing that, and that's why we didn't hear from her after. I don't know. Doug to Athens. Good morning to you. Thanks for hanging out with us today. Interregnum is on the team today. She died after climbing mountains. Stop it. She did not die. Fake news. Fake news, Interregnum. Kevin Phillips is here. Praise be to God. Anyone see the interview with the Tampa Bay Bucks coach where the reporter asked about how they would adjust the playing in Detroit weather? When he responded, quote, they play inside, close quote. You do know there's like a roof over that. I'm not sure if you
wait.
But by the way,
they can put
many
roofs
football
over stadiums.
Yeah, like Buffalo does. They play in the snow, don't they?
Oh yeah.
Oh yes, they do.
Isn't that part of the fun?
It kind of is. It kind of is.
Could you imagine?
Back in the day when I watched football, Joe, there was a running back in Washington named Larry Brown, and Larry Brown was coached by Vince Lombardi. Folks don't know Vince Lombardi actually came to Washington after he left Green Bay to coach the team, and Vince realized that Larry Brown couldn't hear. And so he put hearing aids on him, and Larry Brown was the MVP of the NFL after getting hearing aids because he was just a monster on the field. And unfortunately, he had lost so much of his career, he didn't pile up the stats to go to the Hall of Fame. But Larry Brown, I'll never forget, we had a snow game when I was a Washington fan. They had a snow game against the Eagles, and Larry Brown ran for like 170 yards because he said, I grew up in the snow. I know how to run in it. And so it was just an amazing performance. I've never forgotten that. And I was probably younger than Jake, which means I was really young.
Man, I think Lincoln was still in office when that happened. I'm just saying.
Well, I'm not going to talk about someone getting a big birthday this year, so you better hush, mister, because I know exactly how old you are.
Yikes. By the way, Sci-Fi Mike reminds us it was Amber Carey from Syracuse.
That's right.
That was Queen of the Mics. Yeah. Amber Carey, if you're out there, come back. We'd love to have you back on the team. Praise be to God. That would be amazing. By the way, Alberto asks a deep and profound question. Is Rudy Carlos from GRN gone?
No, he still works for GRN.
Okay,
but he's
so
not on the air.
Here's the more important question to ask about that, Alberto. Was he ever really there?
Joe, stop.
I'm only teasing.
Hey, Rudy Carlos.
Teasing.
I've got to stop, Joe, because I'm going to say this in front of the world. Well, at least the after show, so all 12 of the people listening to the after.
Colin, Jake, let's ban Colin from the chat. Fake news. I'm sorry, you were saying?
He told them your age, didn't he? He disclosed it.
I'm not turning. Do I look 60?
Yes,
I quit if that's the case.
Yes, you do.
I quit. I'm done.
Yes, you do.
I'm done. Good grief. I'm going to go climb the 46 peaks of Western New York. Or is it Eastern New York?
I may look younger than Joe, but I'm actually much older than Joe, so I get to pick on him double. So listen, Rudy Carlos recovered my father's missile that he didn't recover it. He stabilized my father's Latin missile that he took to seminary with him for my family. And so that's amazing. Will be an heirloom that will be passed down, God willing, through the generations of my progeny. And I am forever grateful for Rudy doing that. And so I want to say thank you, Rudy, right here in front of you, Joe. And even Jake with that caterpillar thing underneath his nose. Yes, I did notice it, Jake. And so
Jake's going with you got to put it on camera, Jake. We got to all see it. You got to turn towards the lens so we can see it better.
Look at it. The caterpillar's twitching.
I'm gonna say the quiet part out loud, Jake. You look French.
French? What's wrong with looking French?
Do you have a French ancestry?
Oh, you're out of the club, Jake. Us Austrians,
bro, you look French. You look Norman to me. Are you Norman?
That's fine. Okay, I'm Norman.
You're okay with being Norman?
I'm a Crusader. That's fine.
Oh, the Anglos and the Saxons
the Crusades
turning
were fought
over
by the Germans.
Yeah.
The Normans are like the French and the German. They're all the same. They're all Franks. They're all Franks.
Negative.
Charlemagne's capital was at Aachen. Don't forget that.
Right, because he was German.
Emperor of the Germans.
Okay.
No, he was Frankish.
You got to add a little more to that. Aachen.
No, that's Dutch, Joe. That's Dutch.
Yeah.
There are plenty of German words that you have to get in touch with your phlegm. So.
Well, it depends on where in Germany you're from.
Jawohl. He's from the Vendée, says Interregnum. Interesting. Jake looks like Hemingway, says CMT. Look at that. Is that a compliment?
Where's my patrol boat? I want my private patrol boat and my rum.
There you go. There you go. Praise be to God. KP Jack 06 says, the big 50 is a great number, Joe. I'll see you there on the 11th of July, homie. Bro, it's the same week for you and me, KP Jack 06. We should get together and celebrate at the same time. The sadness, the devastation of the reality of being 50. Half a century. Good grief.
Wear black and eat bad buffet food together.
We should do that. Totally do that. Go to the buffet. It's all over. Okay. I'm going to be here all day, lady. You understand what I'm saying? I'm going to be here till the shift changes, and then I'm going to stay again. Okay. Just keep the plates coming. Anyway.
Hey, did you guys in the Marine Corps call it what we called it in the Coast Guard? We called it the trough. I'm going to go to the trough.
Yeah. Okay, can I just say this for a second? Because, the Marine Corps, you think of I remember the poster at the recruiter's office back in 1805 when I joined up. And there was a poster that talked about the body being an engine. And you got to be careful what you put into it. I can't remember the exact wordage, but it was along those lines. Marines were fit and tough, best shape of their life. So you got to be careful what you put into your engine. That's what they would say. And then you go and you join, and the chow hall had two lines. One was junk food, and the other one was just less of junk food. And it was what are we talking about? If you had an MRE today, it's 10,000 calories of back up my system for 4 days. Good grief, you can't drink enough water to clean that stuff out. It is so bad.
What is this
chow? Propaganda again?
We had good chow in the Coast Guard, so I'm not complaining about the chow.
Coasties. Of course, you in the Air Force, only the best for y'all. Okay, it's
we earn it. I don't know about the omelet? I don't know about
We'll
the
make you a custom omelet, and we'll do your nails while you wait. How about that, huh? Have fun with that one.
We didn't. We get the nails done, but we did get the custom omelets. I do have to reveal that.
I don't know. The worst hash brown I ever had was at the Coast Guard base, the small boathouse in Honolulu, Hawaii. You could use that thing to scrub the deck. It was disgusting. It was hard.
I had surf and turf on Fridays, and all that. We had good food in the Coast Guard. We had a lot of good fish in the Coast Guard. So, yeah, I don't know I don't know about the Honolulu boathouse. I've been there, but I didn't eat there. So I went into.
I loved my time with the Coasties there. They were the coolest dudes I'd ever seen. They were like hippies with uniforms. They didn't have
real
long
job,
hair,
Joe.
But they acted hey Ted, how's it going? I'm good, Bob. How are you, bro? I'm good. All right, man. You ready? Okay, let's go. I'm they don't even call each other by rank. What?
No, not until you make chief.
Until
you make chief.
Yeah,
not
exactly. Chief was the only one who got called by the rank. But it was fun. And Chief, talk about Chief. So Chief saw us kids coming because I was U.S. Naval Sea Cadets in high school, and got shipped over there for the summer to be the personal torture device of the chief, apparently. And Chief's like, "Hey, kid, you want to go on a boat ride?" I'm like, yes, we do. Jump in. So we get in a Zodiac, right?
Jerry Lee Lewis gonna shake, rattle, and roll.
But we get into the Zodiac, and he's like, he pulls us. He observes the sea laws of no wakes and all that until he gets out. Right in front of Waikiki there, right at the break, and he's like, "All right, kid, go up to the front over the bow. The bow. You're learning something new today, kid. Grab the bit and hold on tight." And then he jams the throttle, and we are jumping the waves outside of Waikiki Beach. And then I'm holding on, doing the Superman, going completely horizontal as he's jumping the Zodiac over the waves with kids. I don't mind blow. Could you imagine anybody in the military doing that today with kids, no parental supervision? Could you just imagine?
So in 1994, which I just told everyone how old I was a first class, and unfortunately my dad, who's still with us, had a heart attack in November, December timeframe. And so I flew off patrol to go back and see my dad. And he was young. He was in his 50s when he had this heart attack. So, and his father had died at 57 of a heart attack. So we didn't take this lightly in my family. And so I flew back and stayed with my dad until he got better. And then I got back, and this is at the height. I don't know if, Joe, I know you're old enough to remember this because you're ancient. This was when the huge Cuban migration was coming across from Florida in 94. And so I needed to get back to the ship. And so I'm wearing, do you remember the tropical blue long uniform the Coast Guard wore with the light blue shirt, the dark blue trousers, and the combination cover? I'm wearing that uniform. I've got my bag of clothing I'm going to take with me on patrol. And I get there, and they said, "We're going to take you out in the boat." And so it's a rigid hull inflatable. I don't think it was a Zodiac, but it was definitely a rigid hull inflatable. And we lashed my bag down, which should tell you something. They're lashing my bag down.
Do I need to know something? I mean, I didn't get the memo.
And this is Miami Beach, and it's beautiful, and it's clear, and it's gorgeous weather, and it is that way in December in Miami. It's beautiful, and then you hit the sea buoy, and those seas go from flat calm to what you think they'd be in the middle of winter. And so all of a sudden, and this kid only knew off or full that's driving the boat. That's all he knew. He knew nothing in between off and full. And so this bosun mate has that thing jammed to full, and we're coming 20 feet up out of the water.
Yeah.
My bag is going boom, boom. I'm hanging on for dear life. I've got my combo cap tucked inside my shirt with my shirt buttoned up. So because those things were like $40.
Yes. Oh man. All I could think about was, I am going to die right here. I'm going to fall off this boat and be eaten by sharks before Chief can get this boat whipped around and pick me up. I am going to die today. I held on so white-knuckled, man. I was just like, but I mean, horizontal, just flying like Superman through the skies of Honolulu. It was just literally astounding. But that could never happen.
At least your guy
today.
was a chief. Your guy was a chief, so he knew exactly what he was doing. He had done that for 100 years.
He did.
The guy that was driving me in the boat was a third class, Joe.
he's just special. That's all. He was just special. That's it. You know. And then there was the time when we chased down drunk boaters, and then they gave me a bulletproof vest to put on, and I'm like, am I gonna? Is there gonna be a little? And then they give me the life jacket on top of it. I'm like, I think I'm going to sink to the bottom of the ocean with this thing on. I'm going to die today again. It's good. Like they were so like that was the best part, to be honest with you. We're kids and we're chasing people down with guns and bulletproof vests. It was.
I have a sea story about that.
It was a miracle I did not join the Coast Guard after that because it was so based and baller. It was just so amazing.
It was a great career, Joe, and I have a story about that. So we wore float coats. Typically, and what a float coat is, it looks like a jacket. It's either orange or blue, and it's full of all the flotation device all around. So that's what you wear. And you're right, you wore your vest underneath it. And we were patrolling. I was on a patrol boat at that time, and a patrol boat is basically two engines with a little bit of hull around it. So two 10,000 horsepower Paxman diesel engines surrounded by steel, and 16 guys in the crew, 16
wow.
crew members. And we were so fast that we outran our wake. And so, yes, they're incredibly quick. And some knucklehead off of Fort Lauderdale Beach decides to cut us off in the water. Cut us off in the water.
Yeah. Okay. I tell you what, buddy. Here, hold my beer. Watch this. Turn the lights on, Fred. We're gonna have ourselves a little fun.
He cut us off, and then he hammered down. And I don't want to say the words he probably said when he realized we hammered down right behind him. And so he's running for Miami Beach, and we're following him. We're right on his tail to Miami Beach. He pulls into Miami Beach. He got what was called a courtesy boarding. We went ahead and did a little courtesy boarding.
Oh, yeah. We're going to need to do a little... We're going to do a little search, okay? We're just going to do a little search, or I'm going to need you to spread them, sir. Okay? You're going to feel a slight pressure, all right? Just a slight pressure.
I did not talk like that, Joe. So you know what? It was a great career. It made me a man. Because I was 17 years old when I joined, Joe. I was too. Yeah. I was 121 pounds. I cannot wear the pea coat they issued me in basic training. My wife wears it.
Oh, man. I just saw a pea coat the other day. I went to
one.
Our Army surplus store and saw a pea coat. Yeah, I had flashbacks over that. Yeah, it reminded me of the time where, as a naval sea cadet on another such eventful occasion, I was at Treasure Island in the Bay of San Francisco at the U.S. Naval Leadership Academy. And I pulled watch one night, watching a barracks full of about 80 teenagers, and a drunk sailor comes stumbling down from the psych ward up above because somebody at the U.S. Navy thought, you know what, we got to put these kids someplace. I tell you what, there is an open barracks just underneath the psych ward full of crazy people. Let's go there. That's a great idea. Let's do that. You notice I always think in terms of redneck. For some odd reason, the inner voice is always that. But nonetheless, so I'm standing watch and in the Pico because it was cold. It's San Francisco. And this guy comes pounding on the door, drunk as a skunk, trying to get into the barracks because he heard that we were there and he wanted to get into the barracks. And I thought, oh, this is not going to end well at all. So I had to stand in the gap. I had to stand literally in the door, keeping this dude out of the barracks. It was dicey at best. Again, just that could have never happened. That would never happen today. They would be like,
oh, I would have been discharged for disorderly who knows what they would have discharged me for. I was a good coastie. I never got captain's mast or got written up or gotten in trouble. But
I did.
Or got in trouble, but
I did.
But I never stood before the man except as a witness. So.
Amen to that. Hey, Deborah says, my dad was 17 when he joined and was sent to Korea. My grandfather was in Korea. He got medically discharged after his buddy prematurely fired off the bazooka with my granddad still at the back before he could clear.
Oh, did he get burned?
Yeah, well, it was more of that. I don't know how bad he was burned necessarily as much as it destroyed his hearing for the rest of his life. They medevaced him to Tokyo. And then eventually they medically discharged him, so it was bad. But
oh my goodness!
Yeah. Let's see. Lost in Dimension says, "Poor Joe." Yes. Thank you for feeling sorry for me. I'm glad somebody feels sorry for me. I mean, technically, it's
poor Joe.
It's Jake's job to feel sorry for me, but he doesn't do it. So it's going to be in his performance.
What do they mean, poor Joe?
Sure.
They should be poor Mike and Jake for having to put up with Joe.
What do you?
Is this one of those things that's unwritten in the handbook I got? I have to feel sorry for Joe.
See what I'm saying, folks? You see what I got to deal with here? I mean, he even denies the fact that it's in bold letters in 110-point font. It's the most clear thing out of all the things that he's got to do in a day.
Maybe that's why I missed it, because I was looking for the details.
He was looking for all the fine print. For sure.
Was it in Latin, Joe? If it wasn't in Latin, Jake didn't read.
Yeah. Okay, it was in the old Latin though, not like this new fancy dangled stuff that we. Yeah, exactly. You know. Hey, Surprised by Puppy says the audacity of Jake. Thank you.
That's the title of my autobiography.
For being sympathetic. The audacity of Jake.
I like it.
Let's see, Jake. Put on the fire on the screen. He's still got the fireplace going over there.
I think he said to put it in the fire.
Put it in the fire. Put it in the fire over there.
That's where the handbook went that told him he had to feel sorry for you. He put it in the fire.
I guess.
So.
Lost in Dimension says, with all those screens, I'm surprised they can find anything. Thank you. By the way, our straw poll, do you trust Javier Milei? And do you pronounce his name Javier Milei? Yes, 20%, 19% say no, 60% say no. Jake, where do you fall on that spectrum?
I think I voted not sure. There's enough questionable stuff there where I'm like, we'll see how it turns out.
I'm surprised you equivocated, Jake. I really am surprised. I was pretty sure you'd be either a yes or a no.
No,
so.
I do not. I mean, I'm with you on never trusting a politician ever anywhere. So it's he's interesting. Definitely interesting.
Hey, by the way, Joe, I forgot to tell you one thing about West Michigan. They get snow like they do in Buffalo. So it's no joke. Oh my goodness! When I first moved there, they had these big, giant 16-foot poles on each side of the road, and I was like, "What are those for?" And I'm from the South. I have no clue why they have 16-foot tall poles on each side of the road.
Oh, you're not from around here, are you?
No, I was not. Well, by the end of winter, when they were 6-foot poles, I knew exactly what they were for.
Yikes. That's quite a bit
and
there.
they don't plow. They just drive on the hard pack.
That's right. Exactly. Just pack it all down. It's like, why bother? Okay. It's all going to work out in the end. Hey, Liz Finch says Tech Sergeant Brickhouse, who lived up to his name, was a Marine in my squadron who wisely switched to the Chair Force. We're not all bad, says Liz Finch. From your lips to God's ears, I suppose.
We had Marines who came to their senses in the Coast Guard. We had them.
Came to their senses and or went to prison, and this was their only other option. Was probably.
I think that would be the other way around. If a Coastie left the Coast Guard to go to the Marine, they went to prison for some reason. I love my Marine brothers and sisters, but no, thank you.
Oh man, it's so funny to see the differences between the military services. It's just hilarious to me. And by the way, Jane says, "Did you see the wave that hit Wake Island? My dad was there in World War II in the Bikini Atoll." Yeah, I did see that crazy video of that wave coming into speaking of the Chow Hall, it come crashing through the doors. That was insane.
I did not see this video. I will have to watch this. Hey, the ocean is an unkind mistress, and there's just no two ways about it. And rogue waves are real. I've seen them, and I've seen the aftermath of rogue waves. I have also seen all the knuckleheads who think they can take their 2-meter rigid hull inflatable boat out into open ocean and had to go rescue them. And I still think we should just lash up a line and keep them in the boat, but instead we take them on board. But if you make us come get you like that, I think we should leave you in your boat. But anyway.
I had to do that with the Coasties too. That was so much fun. I got sick as a dog though on those missions. Oh man, I got so sick. Hey, JL Sanchez is in the house. Good morning to you. Thanks for hanging out with us today. Nick Vors, good morning and greetings to you, my friend. Edwin, good morning to you. Edwin, I have a grandson named Edwin, so I'm glad you're on the team today. Mac Thomas from Indy. Are we talking about try living in North Dakota, boys? North Dakota. Do you get any snow in North Dakota? Really?
No, they probably do, Joe. But what I remember about North Dakota,
to snow there.
I went to North Dakota, and they had snow for sure. But what I remember about North Dakota is it made Kansas look hilly. It was the flattest state I have ever been in my life. If they got a foot of rain, they got a 1-inch flood because that place was so flat. Oh my goodness, I'd never seen such a flat place in my life than North Dakota. Yeah, and yes, it was cold.
Yeah.
But I will say it was as cold as Western Michigan, where the lake, the wind whips off the lake. As Jake will tell you, when that wind comes off that lake, we're talking negative whatever.
Mm-hmm. You know, that might be a good subtitle for your autobiography, The Audacity of Jake, A Rogue Wave. That might be pretty good. That might work. A rogue wave. You're a rogue wave, Jake.
I think the audacity of Jake, it's only lake effect. It's only lake effect. Which I hear all the time, like I don't have to shovel lake effect. So
it's only lake effect. That'd be hilarious, actually.
You haven't lived, Joe, until the snowplow puts the 2 feet of snow that was on the road at the end of your driveway right after you finish shoveling it.
No, I got you better. I got you beat, bro. Okay, so I get married. And then we buy a house in the middle of New Hampshire, and it was
beautiful home.
Well, it needed a lot of work, and I couldn't afford any of it. But it was 2 acres on a lake. The driveway, our house was downhill from the road, so it was a downhill driveway to our house from the road, all gravel, and never paved, and slick as ice every winter. So it was I had the tow truck driver on speed dial because I needed him to help me get out of that driveway every single morning. By the time you get to late winter, it was impossible. It was such a problem. I would shovel the drive at the beginning of the snowstorms. I'd shovel the whole thing. Oh yeah, because I'm in the mood. Let's do this thing. By the time you're 3 weeks into it, I shovel only enough to just get the car out. By the time you're towards the end of the season, I only shovel enough for the car for the tire tracks to get out of the driveway. And then I would often go through the hassle of getting up early, get in the car out of the driveway, or I'd get slick and I'd leave the car parked up on the road at night, knowing I'll never get it out in the morning. The big city, the town trucks would come through, and they would plow all the snow on my car to teach me a lesson that I'm not allowed to leave that car on the road. It was the worst.
I get why they did that. You know, you're getting really lazy by, we're talking late April, by the way, when you're so sick of shoveling snow, you're like, I'll just push it out of the way with the car. I'll just use the car as my plow. Oh, man. I remember taking my kids trick-or-treating in 1.5 feet of snow. I was like, oh, goodness. Yeah, I love Western Michigan. It's beautiful. There are only 5 months I want to live there, though.
Exactly.
And that's where Jake lives, in that same climate. Our friend in Erie, Pennsylvania, lives in that same climate. And it's insane. It's insane. But it's beautiful. And by the way, second largest deer harvest in America is Michigan. Right after Texas.
Not surprised. So. I mean, the whole place is run by the deer up there. I mean, I think you have to pay taxes to the deer up in Upper PI. Hey, Matt Thompson says.
Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
When you hit mid-state, the hills begin. This is North Dakota we're talking about. You didn't go far enough west. You didn't go far enough west, partner. I like how we said partner. Do you really say partner in North Dakota? Come, let's be honest.
Oh, partner, I'm not sure that.
And yes, we get some pretty ferocious blizzards here. It's why most folks have 4-wheel or all-wheel drive vehicles. Yay and amen. I'd love to visit the Dakotas. It's on our bucket list, actually. I want to go to the Badlands.
Western South Dakota, and what he's talking about is the same mountain range in North Dakota, which are the Black Hills, if I remember right. That is stunningly beautiful country. It truly is. But that's like people from Colorado. They only want you to see the western part of the state, whereas mountains, the eastern part of the state, is also flat as a pancake. So
yeah. That's okay. Man. Flat states are cool too. What's the flattest? Now that I'm thinking about it, I think you'd probably have to go to what's the flattest part of Europe? Is it France? I think France has a lot of flat parts, right?
I would
think more of the eastern steppes, maybe in Ukraine,
like Kazakhstan or something like that.
No,
I'll bet Ukraine
Eastern
is
Europe.
probably the right answer. I bet Ukraine is right. That's probably the right answer. Listen, I couldn't go to France because I'm German and I'm not allowed in, so I don't know anything about. Unless I'm carrying a rifle, I'm not allowed in France.
Carrying a rifle, yikes!
So
ouch.
Hey, listen, I seriously, Joe, if you haven't read it, you need to read the book about Rudolf Diesel, the man who invented the diesel engine. He was an Alpine German who was born in Paris, and when the Franco-Prussian War started, his family had to leave Paris and they moved to England. But it is fascinating, and the claim is that he committed suicide in 1914. I'm not going to spoil the book for you, Joe, but you really need to
send me a link to that. I'll have to check that out.
I will. Knowing how much you love history,
anyway.
It was fascinating, and the diesel engine revolutionized the world. We all think gasoline engines are the norm, but all your boats,
and there is a Padre Pio connection to the diesel locomotive, by the way.
There is. And so most of everything we have in this world comes by diesel and diesel fuel. And the wonderful thing about diesel fuel is you don't have to have oil resources to make diesel. You can make it out of vegetable oil or whatever. So read this book, Joe. I'll send you the link.
Mike, why do you hate the environment, bro? Why do you hate? Why do you hate Mother Earth, Michael?
Mother who?
Can you explain this
I know
to me?
Mother Mary. Who's this Mother Earth you speak
Michael?
of?
Mother Earth. Why do you hate her? What did she do to you? You just love diesel engines and fossil fuels.
I love diesel engines. I do.
Just because all your food comes on a diesel-driven truck doesn't mean
Joe,
you get the right to hate Mother Earth.
Joe, I'm going to get in my Dodge Ram 2500 diesel, and I'm going to celebrate what you just said. I might even. I've never done it, but I might even cold roll that thing. So, Jake's throwing us off the air.
Right.